About 20 years after the First Crusade, 9 knights gathered in Jerusalem to establish one of history's most mysterious orders. Their goal was to ensure the safety of pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. They named themselves the Poor Soldiers of Christ. However, it wasn't long before they became known as the Knights Templar, a name that is still used today. They were one of the most powerful orders in history. In fact, shortly after their establishment, they amassed such incredible wealth that they were soon lending money to Europe's most famous kings. In this video, we will witness how they gained this power. Following the capture of Jerusalem by the Crusaders on July 15, 1099, the First Crusade ended, resulting in the formation of 4 Crusader states in the Middle East: the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, the County of Tripoli, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. However, these newly established political entities were militarily fragile, and even years after the Latin kingdoms were founded, law and order were not fully established. After the city was captured, many of the local Muslims retreated to the hills surrounding Jerusalem and nearby caves, creating significant problems for the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The pilgrim routes to Jerusalem, such as the ones through Jaffa, Jerusalem, and Jericho, were frequently attacked by these Muslims. As a solution, several orders were established to protect the pilgrims and provide for their needs. Among these were the Holy Sepulchre Knights, who quickly disbanded and disappeared into history, and the Hospitaller Knights, who attended to the pilgrims' health. However, these 2 orders were insufficient in ensuring the safety of the pilgrims, and by around 1120, Muslim attacks on pilgrimage routes had increased significantly. During this period, 2 knights, Hugh de Payens and Godfrey de Saint-Omer, proposed the establishment of a new order during the 1120 Nablus Council, where they appeared before King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. This proposal was supported by Patriarch Warmund of Jerusalem, and with the king's approval, the new order was officially founded in 1120. In their charter, known as the Rule, the following was stated: "The order will have 10 knights to escort pilgrims to the Jordan River, and wagons to transport provisions and pilgrims." They named themselves Paupers Camilitones Christi, or the Poor Soldiers of Christ. However, this name remained largely limited to official documents and a few historical records. King Baldwin had given them a part of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which Christians believed had been built on the site of Solomon's Temple. Because of this, shortly after their establishment, they began to be referred to as the Knights Templar in reference to their first headquarters in Jerusalem. The order was based on 3 core principles: poverty, chastity, and obedience, with the most important of these being the principle of poverty. The image you see here is one of the early symbols of the Templars: 2 knights on horseback. This symbol represented the order's commitment to poverty and simple living. But were the Knights Templar truly poor? It's difficult to answer this definitively because much about the early days of the order remains a mystery. For example, many sources mention 9 founding members, but only 8 names are given: Hugh de Payens, Godfrey de Saint-Omer, Payen de Montdidier, Archambaud de Saint-Amand, André de Montbard, Geoffrey Bison, Rossel, and Gondomer. Many of their pasts have been lost to history, so it is impossible to determine whether they were poor before the order was established or whether they adopted this principle later for other reasons. It doesn't seem very likely that ordinary men would approach the king of Jerusalem to propose the creation of a new order. Therefore, historians suggest that the poverty principle was emphasized to gain the sympathy and support of poor Christians, and to lay the groundwork for future donations to the order. However, some historians claim that the knights were genuinely committed to poverty in the early years of the order. Even if this was the case, their commitment would not last long, as the order experienced a rapid rise that would bring them wealth far beyond what they could have imagined. There were many factors behind the Knights Templars' rapid rise. The intellectual background and worldly mission of the order were developed by Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most famous religious leaders of the time. Thanks to his efforts, the Knights Templar quickly became a well-known order across Europe. At the same time, the first Grand Master of the order, Hugh de Payens, was rapidly climbing the ranks. He was an ambitious and intelligent man with a dynamic personality. He quickly developed close relationships with the King of Jerusalem and the Patriarch. In 1127, he was sent on a diplomatic mission to Europe on behalf of King Baldwin. This mission would forever change the fate of the Templars. During his time in Europe, Hugh de Payens met with numerous nobles and religious figures, including kings, and traveled as far as Britain, gathering substantial donations. He established Templar houses in London and Edinburgh, and when he returned to Jerusalem, he brought with him 300 trained and fully equipped knights to take part in a new crusade against the Muslims. The Templars reaped the rewards of their efforts at the 1129 Council of Troyes, where the order was officially recognized by the Papacy, propelling their rapid rise to prominence. In 1130, Bernard of Clairvaux published a treatise called In Praise of the New Knighthood, which helped define the internal rules of the order. From this point on, the Templars established a vast bureaucracy across Europe, especially in France and England. Within a short time, the number of knights surpassed 300, and the number of supporting members was far greater. After the Council of Troyes and Bernard's efforts, the Knights Templar became the official representative of the Papacy's holy war ideology, which was initiated by the Pope through the Crusades. However, they would gain most of their power through the issuing of papal decrees. Between 1133 and 1151, the Papacy issued 26 decrees supporting the Templars. Many of these granted the order various privileges that could be considered reasonable. However, it was the papal bull Omni Datum Optimum, issued in 1139 by Pope Innocent II, that granted the Templars immense power. This decree placed the Knights Templar under papal protection and granted them substantial privileges, including exemption from church taxes, the right to collect taxes from their congregations, the ability to seize spoils of war in battles against Muslims, exemption from all ecclesiastical trials in Europe and the East, and independence from any secular authority. With these privileges, the Templars were able to act like an autonomous state loyal to the Papacy in many Catholic regions for the next 2 centuries. The next step for the Templars was institutionalization. To consolidate their material and spiritual power, they needed to formalize their wealth. To do this, they built many Templar houses both in the West and the East. In a short time, they created a vast network covering all of Europe and the Crusader states. A Templar house typically consisted of multiple buildings located close to each other on a plot of land. These houses were generally built in important cities, strategic locations, or along trade routes, and they served multiple functions. During times of mobilization, their primary purpose was to provide money, weapons, horses, and food for the Crusaders and facilitate their transportation. In addition, they played an important role in banking and the transportation of pilgrims to the Holy Land. They worked the land they owned, imported and exported goods, spread their ideological message, and trained new soldiers to fight Muslims on behalf of the Catholic Church. In short, the entire organization of the Templars revolved around these houses. The members living in these houses cultivated the land, produced goods like wool, ceramics, meat, and wine, and helped generate income for the order. Furthermore, they collected taxes from the peasants and farmers who lived under their control. However, these revenues constituted only a small portion of the overall wealth. The Templars' wealth was largely based on the spoils of war, donations from wealthy European nobles, and their well-organized banking system. After the Council of Troyes in 1129, the Templars had become the elite corps and professional armies of the Crusades. By the time of the Second Crusade, they played a significant role in most campaigns, which resulted in a major increase in their income. Nearly all the spoils from the wars with Muslims went into the Templars' coffers. In addition, their profits from the logistical services they provided during the campaigns were also substantial. Another major source of income came from donations made by wealthy European nobles. According to historian Michael the Syrian, knights who joined the order were required to donate all their wealth to the Templars. In this way, the Templars quickly accumulated great wealth after their establishment. But the donations didn't stop there. Before the Council of Troyes, the Templars had already received 21 different donations from European kings and queens outside the order. With the official papal recognition, the amount of donations drastically increased. From 1120 to 1129, the Templars had received only 21 donations, but between 1129 and 1150, they received over 600 donations. These donations were mostly in the form of movable goods such as gold, silver, weapons, and horses. Additionally, they received significant amounts of land and real estate, some of which they used for themselves while renting out others. In this way, they earned income from every property under their control. The Knights Templar were initially founded to protect the pilgrimage routes to the Holy Land. In the early years of the order, their operational areas were mostly confined to the Crusader kingdoms. They would transport pilgrims from port cities like Acre, Jaffa, and Arsuf to the pilgrimage centers in the interior, especially Jerusalem. However, as the order grew, the scope of this protection expanded. By the mid-12th century, the Templars had a broad operational reach that covered much of Europe. Pilgrims from various parts of Europe would travel through the Templar-protected routes, stay in their houses, and use their ships to cross the seas, all under the protection of the order. Regardless, this journey was long, arduous, and dangerous. The pilgrimage routes were filled with groups that would ambush pilgrims to steal their valuables. Aware of these dangers due to their work, the Templars eventually developed a banking system to secure pilgrims' possessions. Under this system, pilgrims traveling from Europe would deposit their money and valuables at the nearest Templar house, receiving a receipt that detailed how much they had deposited and included their personal information. Upon reaching Jerusalem, for example, the pilgrim would present the receipt at the local Templar house and receive an equivalent sum of money. Naturally, the Templar houses would take a commission for these transactions. Initially, this system was a simple infrastructure to ensure the safe transport of pilgrims' money to the pilgrimage centers. However, over time, the Templars expanded their commercial activities and, utilizing knowledge from Islamic economics, they established a rudimentary version of today's modern banking system. By the end of the 12th century, they were providing services such as lending to countries and individuals, paying pensions, collecting taxes, and facilitating money transfers, which are services we still see in modern banking today. They issued receipts for every transaction, noting the names of both the Templar member conducting the transaction and the client, the date of the transaction, and the amount involved. For example, in transactions from 1295 to 1296, receipts show the names of members such as Baldwinus, Johannes, Martinus, and Rennerus. Through their banking operations, the Templars quickly became an international financial institution, meeting the monetary needs of European kings, clergy, and nobles. The order, founded by 9 knights around 1120, had grown to over 20,000 members by the mid-12th century. Their fleet had grown large enough to rival that of the Venetian and Genoese maritime republics. By this time, the Templars were lending money to Europe's famous kings and nobles and seizing their property if payments were not made on time. They were even able to sometimes intervene in the internal affairs of countries. Founded as the Poor Soldiers of Christ, the Templars became the wealthiest organization in Europe in just 20 years. This rapid rise led to mysterious tales of treasure, the Holy Grail, and the Shroud of Turin being associated with the Templars. However, most of these associations are difficult to prove historically and often remain at the level of conspiracy theories. Historical records show that the Templars' wealth was generated through donations, spoils of war, banking, and commercial activities, as mentioned in this video. From this perspective, the Templars appear to be a much more ordinary, but equally powerful and wealthy order than the one portrayed in conspiracy theories. Their rise was fast and striking, and their downfall was equally unexpected. We plan to discuss this topic and the military structure of the order in more detail in another video. So, if you want to see the continuation of this series, don't forget to mention it in the comments. See you in the next video.